as you can tell from the picture and from the heading, the discussion is about what to do about number of bears in the municipality. We don't track incidents or complaints because it's primarily a provincial matter, but anecdotally the numbers have increased, mostly in the spring, and mostly related to areas that border on woodlands or forest, but not always. Last week I was told by a teacher that, there was 4 bears behind King Street Elementary, which, it borders on some woodland, but there seems to be fingers of, trees that provide access into the more densely populated areas for wildlife, including bears. And the conventional wisdom is that they're coming for food. So the current situation is it's handled by DNR. The city's, animal services officer deals with nuisance wildlife, but that is skunks, raccoons, etc. Nothing bigger. Once you get into bears, deer, moose, anything like that, it is Department of Natural Resources. They generally respond to complaints by bringing in cages, catching the animal, and relocating them. The city currently, as I say, have no programs to assist or to handle the matter. So we looked briefly last year, or I guess we looked at it last year. We had a specific request to consider weekly garbage pickup. And we did, and it was not recommended at the time that council do it, but I'm going to touch on it again just to recap the argument. Currently, Faro provides garbage and recycling pickup on alternative weeks, and Faro currently doesn't have the equipment or the manpower to double the garbage pickup, which is what they would have to do. They, as I say, every second week is recycling. So they have indicated that if they were asked to provide that service, what would it look like? And phrases such as, we would need a long-term contract because we're going to have to invest in equipment and manpower. And estimated and starting point discussion was $60,000 a month, which is what you pay for your current garbage removal. So that would be the starting point if you wanted to entertain that option. The last thing we discussed was, if you provided garbage every week, what would be the impact on recycling? Meaning, how much recycling is being motivated by people's recognition that their bin isn't going to be picked up every week? And it may be almost forced recycling, but we think it's a factor in a lot of households. People don't want to pay the extra fee for the $2 bag. Well, the way to avoid that is to be more mindful of your recycling practices. If we switched every week, we're wondering what the impact would be, and we really don't think it would be a positive one. The newest recommendation or request was to implement a bylaw. So we did some research, and there are bylaws, we've been calling them bear bylaws, but they're obviously not for the bears. They're for the people that are contributing to the attracting of the bears. And they're generally called food attractant bylaws. Popular, obviously, where you wouldn't be surprised to hear, Alberta and British Columbia. The bylaws seek to minimize the availability of foods and other substances. And I'm going to give you an idea, because these bylaws, some of them are pretty detailed, so I'm going to try and give you, without going on too long, an idea. The District of Tofino in 2024 passed such a bylaw, and it regulates things more than just what you would think, which is garbage. Any fruit or nuts picked or fallen from a tree have to be disposed of. Bird feeders containing suet or nectar have to be inaccessible to wildlife other than birds. No food can be provided to songbirds between April and November, except liquid feeders. Composting activity has to be carried out and would be regulated not to attract dangerous wildlife. Barbecue equipment and tools remaining out of doors have to be free and clear of residual food. No refrigerator, freezer, or other containers that have food in them can be left outside. All grease, antifreeze, paint, petroleum products have to be stored inaccessible. Bees and beehives have to be kept in such a manner not to attract dangerous wildlife. They have to be inaccessible to those wildlife, and it suggests that bees and beehives have electric fencing around them designed to keep the wildlife out. Chickens and chicken coops and pens have to be made so that they keep dangerous wildlife out. They talk about electric fencing around such chicken coops and fences. And all home food delivery items left outside have to be done so not to attract dangerous wildlife. They also have wildlife resistant containers. We price them $570 for a wildlife resistant container. So there, some of the other ones were less, not as long or detailed, but they came down to the same thing. Just by way of note, Tofino, the fine is up to $50,000, indicating it's a pretty serious fine matter there. Other places we found it was up to $5,000. So that would be the goal. Some of them require buildings to have your garbage in, not just a wildlife container, a resistant container. And the last they all have in them is the hours that garbage will be taken to the curb. Interestingly enough, our garbage bylaw has a provision in there. And it says you can't take your garbage out until 6 in the morning, and you have to have the can back in, I think it's at 10 at night. And it seemed to be, when it was first adopted, why have it in there? But it's clearly, for those that didn't understand, not for the convenience of people or the garbage truck operators, but to keep wildlife. I think at the time we were mostly thinking about raccoons and stuff that may topple over your garbage cans. But that is the only bylaw-related section we have that directly or indirectly deals with food attractants for animals.
Thank you, Manager. Any questions?
I got a couple more there.
I'll go to it.
I'll just finish up.
You're on a roll.
Education. All the literature we have found said, they encourage bylaws to be combined with education. Education in New Brunswick is done by the province. There is stuff online. It wasn't that, I guess, easy to find. But it had all the standard, 2 pages of what to do and what not to do to keep black bears out of your property. The city currently does nothing in terms of this subject matter. Last one is our conclusions. To be perfectly straightforward, we don't think weekly garbage pickup is the solution, and it won't necessarily solve the problem. If people are improperly storing food on their property, they're going to do it every week, not just the second week. As I had a director say, the bears don't know when the garbage pickup comes. If they smell the food, they're going to come. So people that are causing this or exacerbating this are likely to exacerbate it even if you picked up the garbage once a week. Yeah. The bylaws, we think it's somewhat of a problem right now to implement anything. You have areas of this city where if you start handing out fines for leaving a barbecue not cleaned overnight, and they're in areas that have never seen a bear, I'm sure there'll be pushback. We also anticipate problems in getting access to people's property, to go and get a warrant to go onto someone's property to see if their barbecue tools are washed and laid out, could lead to pushback. So there are some problems in that respect. The area we think the city can do something sooner rather than later is on education. We can become much more active both on social media and the website in telling people what they should do and not do, and encouraging them. The bears aren't a problem in January. You know, when the snow melts, the bears become a problem right off the bat. So we don't believe anybody intentionally goes and puts food out to bring bears into their neighborhood. We think that there may be just a lot of people not understanding how small little things can attract these animals from a long distance. And we think that, it's viable and probably should be done, that we increase our communication and our education of the public on the subject. So that's essentially where we are with it now, subject to any questions and directions from council, how they'd like to proceed.
Councilor DeBlacy.
Yeah, I think ultimately I'd be in line with the recommendations. I think the one example of a bylaw that was demonstrated, I think the realities are different just based on the species. Like you're talking about grizzly bears versus black bears, right? I think, there's something to be said there around the need maybe in that jurisdiction. So I think ultimately I'm in line with the recommendations. Looking through the documents here in front of me that the province puts out, and ultimately it's good, helpful tips that can certainly help. So communicating that effectively, I think, is going to be the goal here. But I appreciate the groundwork that's been done.
Thank you. Your Worship.
Thanks. Yeah, I appreciate actually all the advance work. I hadn't seen this letter until today, so it's all kind of new to me. I would say, I think it is a no-brainer, as staff have pointed out. Councillor DeLacy's mentioned that we start to share more proactively information, and I don't think we have to reinvent the wheel. I think we can, do social media posts and provide links on the website to the province's information hub. That to me seems like something that could happen really quickly. Agreed 100%, as I always have, with I have no interest in moving to a weekly garbage pickup. We took a lot of time and effort to get to where we are now, and it's not viable from a cost perspective. And I agree too, recycling is already partially down over the last few years anyway. So, but I will say that I personally would be interested in exploring some sort of, maybe not necessarily an individual bylaw, but even if there are elements we could add into the garbage bylaw. And I know, Mr. Manager, you've gone through the details of one example, that certainly, for the reasons you laid out, seems like it might be too heavy-handed or impractical for us. But this is a chronic issue. We have gotten these letters about bears every year I've been here. And if we could take maybe one or two little pieces that could be helpful and add them to the garbage bylaw, just that you have to keep your garbage stored when it's not out for pickup. Something just like that's effectively, when I look at what's in the letter, I think they're giving suggestions of where things happen, but not necessarily that we have to go as deeply as some of those communities have. Some of these communities are also smaller and same size and scale as us. So I do think I'd be interested in maybe at another standing committee meeting to have this on to sort of, with the lens of what maybe could be done, and maybe we could get provided some of those simple bylaws for a discussion. But so I'm not interested in being too heavy-handed or doing things that we can't practically do. But if there's one or two baseline elements of, that we could add in, let's keep the garbage safely stored when it's not out to the yard. Even something like that could make a difference. Yeah. I think it is worth looking at that because, it is a chronic issue. So thanks.
Thank you, Your Worship. Councillor Doyle.
Thank you, and thank you for that report, Manager Mike. And I did mention this here before, that weekly pickup, it's been in Fredericton, where my daughter lives, and she lives in a huge subdivision, and they have bear problem. But their garbage is picked up every week, so picking up it every week does not solve the bear problem. And I wondered, because, changing a bylaw does take a considerable amount of time, and the snow would be flying probably before we're done. I wondered if it's more along a policy line that we could have. It may not be as enforceable, but it would at least get it out there in the public.
Yeah, because we have done a lot of the legwork already, I'm pretty confident by next month's meeting we could have a draft of a bylaw or modifications of our current one before council, with the goal of potentially by middle August, if you're going to put a bylaw in. So policy is going to be a little tough because we can't enforce it. So the policy would go towards how we enforce, but the bylaw, I think, can be, here next month for your review and then moved up.
Just to build on that too, like I guess, and Councilor Doyle, you've been here in another way for a long time too. Like this does come up every year. So even if we got some work done and got it in place later in the summer, that will make an impact in future years too, you know, because I'm confident, we'll get letters like this again next year and the year after, and, you know, let's see what we practically can do, even if it's just a little bit, might make a difference over time.
Thank you, Your Worship. Okay, next one is Welton Street, University Avenue, intersection of